Animal Crossing. The game that has appeased all of us millennials and zoomers with the fantasy of owning a house and actually having friends. The game that has saved us from screaming into a pillow and crying ourselves to sleep. Well, most of us. I don't have a Switch. Does that mean I have to make my own Animal Crossing? Because I don't have a Switch, I should have spent my time working on my fan game Sonic Near Harmony, but instead I spent my time playing Genshin Impact instead. But when it comes to Genshin Impact or Animal Crossing, one thing that is really important to both games is an art direction. A lot of modern games arguably don't have any sort of art direction, and instead focus on making your console explode while trying to process hyper-realistic graphics. However, Animal Crossing has kept a certain style and charm in mind since the GameCube, and that's its cute cartoony trees, water, grass, etc. The overall look and feel of a game is not as tough to overlook or even save for later. It has to be thought about during every step of the process, or at least most of them. Because I want to focus heavily on optimization for Sonic Near Harmony, I had to find an art style that matches this specification. I first thought about making everything low poly, and that worked for the most part, but the game doesn't have that much of a charming appeal, at least to me. So what style of game would fit a low poly project based heavily on optimization? Why not old PS1/GameCube games? While the GameCube is, in all reality, quite the powerful machine, I think I could still take away some of the artistic aspects of some old GameCube games. One game I have in mind is Animal Crossing. While watching some videos involving the old Animal Crossing, something that stuck to me was the Old Town River, and how impeccably it flowed. It really stuck with me, and it made me seriously start to think about the art direction of my own game. And so using the one Animal Crossing game that I have, and some others that I have obtained, I took a look at how the water flowed in the game, among other things. Firstly, the water, at least in GameCube, seems to be just a texture tiling on top of a mesh. That doesn't seem too impossible to pull off. The bleached water, however, seems a little more complicated, but I don't feel like analyzing it. Sonic Near Harmony doesn't have a beach. Another thing I noticed in the GameCube version is the weird transition between quadrants. I would imagine this is the game's way of streaming each section of the town. It works well because the camera is stuck in a top-down position. Wild World's water is more or less the same, nothing to phone home about here. The world seems to be streaming, however, without the sharp transition the GameCube had. I'm sure the curved world provides well for that. The director wanted that to be in there so that way the horizon could be present at all times since the top screen was going to be the sky. I looked into doing this, but the calculations seem pretty intensive for what I want, so in Pocket Camp, I don't care about the water or streaming or anything, cause I have Fang! And I love him so much! Look at him! Ah! The world in Pocket Camp doesn't have to stream at all since the game travels to each area for you. The river at Lost Clear Creek is interesting, however. It seems to be two instances of the same texture overlapping and crossing over each other. There also seems to be a foam-like thing at the edge of the water. I don't want to concern myself with that though, so let's just stick to the basics. So now that we've dipped our toes into the waters of this business, let's get to recreating it. What? You think I just talk and not do anything? Get in, loser! We're making shaders! Anyways, let's start recreating the texture. I'm using Infinite Painter on my iPad to create a repeating pattern that somewhat resembles water, even though it looks more like a galaxy. Now that that's done, I'm going to open up a new LWRP Unity project. Here it is! Totally a mint project and no one I've erased and reset it after a failed recording attempt. Because this is a totally mint project, I have to enable Shader Graph. I head up to Window and Package Manager, then I ensure that the preview packages are turned on. After that, I head down and search for Shader Graph. While that's installing, let's head over to Blender. Yay, time efficiency! First, delete the default cube. It's stinky and we don't want it. Next, using Shift A, let's add a plane. Woo! Look at it! It's so adorable! It's so gorgeous! Ah! Now that that's there, let's save it. We're gonna save it to our Unity projects asset folder. I'm not gonna bother naming it because, well, what else am I gonna use this project for? A game? And that's what you want. Go look for someone who's committed and dedicated and better than me and 10 times more likable in every possible way. Like Hootie. Now that that's saved up, let's head back to Unity and, let's go back and delete the light and camera because they're stinky and we don't need them. Now, let's get started on the shader. First, I'm going to drag my model into the workspace. Before I do anything, I'm going to make a new material. Then I'm going to put that onto the plane. Just as a placeholder, I'm going to drag my water texture into the albedo field. Make sure you set the texture type to Sprite, 2D, and UI, and the wrap mode to repeat. That way, a texture tiles properly. Now we're going to create a new PBR graph. I'm going to open it up and dock the window into my layout. First, I'm going to create a texture property. I'm going to create a sample texture 2D node and connect it to the albedo slot of the master node. Let's save it and test it out. Now from the UV slot, I'm going to drag it out and create a tiling and offset node. Now I'm going to make a vector 2 property for tiling. I'm going to drag that into the tiling node's tiling slot. Don't forget to adjust your default values. For now, I'm just setting it to 1. Now I'm making another vector 2D property, this time for offset. This property will control the speed of our water. I'm going to drag it down and connect it to a multiply node. Next, I'm going to connect the B slot to the time node of a time slot node. Finally, I'm going to connect the output of our multiplication to the offset node slot of our tiling and offset node. And that's it. That's literally the shader. Yay, we're done! No, we're not. Now we have to put this into practice. Let's head over to Blender. In edit mode, I'm going to select an edge of our plane, press E, then click anywhere. I'm not going to even move it or anything. Then, I'm going to select the move tool and move out the new face. I'm doing this so that way everything stays snaps and level and perfectly in line with each other. And I'm going to keep doing this, rotating and even scaling some edges until I have something resembling a river. Now I'm going to save it and head back to Unity. Let's see how a river wait. That's not what we want. So back in Blender, let's press A, then U on our keyboards. Click Unwrap and then save our project again. Back in Unity, we can see the what the f***. So in Blender, we're going to have to open the UV editor. In this window, let's select the bottommost vertex, snap it to the cursor. Next, using the Control key, select the topmost vertex, and align X. Do the same for the other side. Now for each horizontal edge, align it to the Y-axis. Click this tiny little arrow in this corner because it's tiny and you're not going to see it, like me. And select the move tool. Now, we're going to move all the horizontal edges until the faces look like each other. After we save it, our river should be working properly. And that's it! I hope you found this video enjoyable and interesting, if not informative. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. I have another video just like this coming out somewhere between early April to late June. And I do other types of content in between then, so stick around. See you then! 紹介をしましょう公開尺は